The IBS Journey, Part 3.
I just don't think doctors get it.
Well, how can they if they've never experienced the pain, discomfort, tiredness, and not to mention the sheer embarrassment themselves? The honest truth is that IBS can turn your world upside down, and it can also catch you off guard, so I discovered the hard, and embarrassing, way.
When it strikes, it can mess up and disrupt everything going on in your life.
IBS doesn't care if you're in the middle of a multi-million-dollar deal. It doesn't care if you're on the sideline watching your kids play Little League.
It doesn't care if you're on a second date with someone. It really doesn't care at all.
If that's not bad enough, it also affects you in different ways, even between your episodes. Once officially diagnosed, if you can call it that without any real tests, I found myself feeling anxious all the time.
When is it going to strike next?
That was why I found the doctor's advice to stop stressing out to be a bit ironic. I felt like it was impossible to enjoy life, like it should be enjoyed.
I certainly couldn't relax.
In fact, I'm almost certain that my constant worrying also negatively impacted my condition even more. IBS changed me. I wish I could say that my initial confirmation from the doctors gave me comfort, but it didn't. I couldn't see how taking both laxatives and Imodium could help me.
Nor could I see how I could relax more and stop stressing when I had no idea when it was going to catch me out again.
I did seek second and third opinions, but they all pretty gave me the same advice. In the next year or so, the situation got even worse. Sometimes I'd be off work 3 or 4 days in a row. I'd lock myself in my room, in total darkness, praying that it would quickly pass. I lost friends because of my IBS. It's not because they weren't supportive of me, it was because I just couldn't face going out into the real world.
I went where I had to go and then headed immediately home. I'd cancel on friends and family at the last minute. I'd turn down invites.
And not surprisingly, the calls, messages, and invites slowly began to cool off.
My career suffered too.
Forget the day when I had to run out of the boardroom, holding onto my stomach in agony. That day was just one of many. And because I'd had no cure, it meant that I still had IBS. Chronic fatigue set in. As a result, my productivity suffered too, to the point that I was hauled in front of my boss and asked if I had some dependency issues.
I think he was referring to drugs or alcohol.
To be fair, I'd lost weight, looked pale, and had permanent dark rings under my eyes.
I wasn't a pretty sight.
I explained that I'd been diagnosed with IBS, but this meant nothing to him.
He had a business to run. I got a formal warning. I got a written warning. I lost my job. The tipping point. Losing my job was a bit of a reality check. I guess I could have fought it.
I possibly could have sued them.
But what was the point? I had to figure it out. I needed to take control back.
Because who, in their right mind, would ever employ me in such a state?
I wouldn't.
Desperation sunk in.
No way was I going to pump myself up with a concoction of laxatives, Imodium and antidepressants.
I joined every IBS forum I could find.
I spent hours chatting on Facebook to people that were also suffering from it. Some people had it even worse off than me. There were some that had lost their homes and their families.
How could one condition, that some stated wasn't even a proper medical condition, cause so many problems and wreck so many lives? I'm just so thankful that I have a happy ending to my story, and my IBS has well and truly gone.
Unfortunately, there are so many other people out there that can't say the same. Because just like I had once done, they rely solely on the advice of doctors. The triggers. To say I became a little obsessed in ridding myself of this condition is an absolute understatement. All you had to do was go into my computer history to see what I mean. Some friendly people online had been experimenting with treating their triggers. What did I have to lose?
Surely, focusing on the triggers could at least minimize my flare-ups.
Doing this could help me get back on track with everything. I was desperate to try and rebuild my life.
What I had learned about IBS was not one size fits all. Every single person is different, and what might trigger my IBS could be something completely different for someone else.
Unfortunately, it wasn't as easy as the doctors made it out to be. Dieting. One thing many doctors told me was to change my diet. They told me to eliminate things, but they didn't tell me what to remove.
I had no idea about how to eliminate and then re-add. Was it a matter of going cold turkey with certain food?
I had no clue.
So while the medical expert's advice sounded good, and made sense to me in theory, it was difficult to put into practice without guidance. So I took it upon myself to try almost every diet I could find online that came up when I tapped in the words diets for IBS.
High fiber diets, low fiber diets, low fat diets, the ketogenic diet, a gluten-free diet, and a low FODMAP diet were just some of the diets I attempted and failed at. Nothing seemed to work.
Again, if I were armed with the information about how to get rid of IBS back then, things would have been completely different. Stay tuned for the IBS Journey, Part 4.